Well, the Georgia Bulldogs have a new baseball coach. We don't normally talk about baseball on here, but stick with me. It's going to be LSU pitching coach Wes Johnson, and he's been an assistant around the league at Mississippi State and Arkansas. He's going to take over after LSU gets done with its NCAA responsibilities. I don't know how far LSU can go, but usually pretty good. But globally, more than talking about Wes Johnson specifically, I'll just tell you, I don't know a lot about baseball. It's a sport I never played. But somehow, I don't know how this has happened, but I know a lot of people around baseball, and they have been very frustrated for a long time with the lack of production from Georgia's baseball program. It's just not good enough. And the Scott Strickland experiment went on too long. If you want to criticize Josh Brooks, you could criticize him about that for sure. The contract extension with Scott Strickland was a mistake. But to Josh's credit, Josh Brooks is the athletic director at Georgia. He made a change this spring, and it was time for the University of Georgia to go 10 years without reaching a super regional, if I'm not mistaken, or winning one certainly is inexcusable. And as a person who grew up in Atlanta, I am well aware of the talent, not just in football, not just in basketball, the two things that I know plenty about, but baseball. It's loaded up, not just in Atlanta, for the record, all over the state. It is pathetic that Georgia has been as dismal as it's been in baseball for as long as it's been. There's just no excuse about it. Now, I don't want to hear about the stadium. I don't want to hear about, this, that, and the other. No, they had the wrong coach, first of all. And in this league, you have to want to win. So it will be up to LSU's current coach is Jay Johnson. It will be up to Wes Johnson to get this thing going. And here's what Jay Johnson, I'm sorry, it's slightly confusing. He said, this is the LSU head coach. He says, I love him like a brother, talking about Georgia's new head coach, Wes Johnson. I mean, I can't imagine only spending 11 months with somebody and connecting the way that we have. So he made a big impact on LSU's head coach. Make sure you're picking up our 2023 preview. If you buy Double Dogs today, which is the story of this behind the scenes story of Georgia's 2023 national team, 2022. There's so many national championships. 22 national championship. You get our 2023 preview edition included with it. It comes with all the packaging. Dog Instruction is still out there too. That's the story of the 2021 national championship. Again, so many national titles, it gets confusing. And honestly, Georgia baseball should be winning national championships. Period. I mean, look, basketball should be in the Final Four, and baseball should be at College World Series. Period. Men's basketball should be in the Final Four. Don't get me started. Now, I know a lot of people in basketball, and there's just been total, utter failure on Georgia's part for a long time there. I think it's pointed in the right direction. Whether or not Mike White is the guy that will get Georgia to the Final Four, I don't know the answer to that. But what I wrote about basketball when Mike was hired, I don't know Mike White. Listen, this connection that we have, this isn't about me feeding you Georgia's bullshit. All right, this is real. They don't tell me what to say. I want to make that real clear. If you hadn't figured that out yet, I don't owe anybody at Georgia anything. I don't disrespect. I don't have any sort of negativity towards them. But this is my view. This is my reporting. This is what we think at Dawg Post, and we're not always going to say what people like. But the reality is, for too long at Georgia, the men's basketball has not been good enough. For too long, for sure. Now, basketball's been worse, but for too long, for sure, baseball's not been where it needs to be. I mean, there's no excuse with the situation that baseball has, and people don't know the nuance here. The state of Georgia, obviously is a talent-rich baseball state. But what you're leaving out of all this is one of the most important things. There's only like 9 or 11 scholarships, whatever is in baseball. It's not much. In tennis, there's 4.5. Well, there's 6 singles players. So just like football's not in this position. Basketball's not in this position. Those are what we would call fully funded sports. Baseball's not like that. Okay, so it is an inherent advantage to be in a state like Georgia where you can get other scholarship dollars at a public institution. Now, if I'm incorrect on that, someone can correct me, but I don't think I am. So there's other things that you can do on that front. And that they are just failing so have failed so miserably. It's a lack of imagination. And let me just rant on basketball for a second, because again, I'd love to talk. We're going to see what happens under Mike White, and I'm not saying that the hiring of Tom Crean was the wrong call, because I don't think it was. I think it was the right call. I know that the longevity of Mark Fox was way too long. That was Greg McGarity's biggest mistake, period. He knew there were problems with football. He tried to correct them and all this, but he held on too long with Mark Fox. And it was the problem with Mark Fox, much like Scott Strickland, the baseball coach. And I know this is totally inside. Normally, if you're watching this, we talk about football. That's what we talk about because that's what it is, right? But my business would be accentuated by these teams mattering and it being really important and good at Georgia. It's not, though. And I think, because I've been around long enough to know, that if basketball gets it rolling a little bit, Stegman will be packed. And it will be a scary place to play, just like it was at the turn of the century. Well, really the late 90s to the turn of the century. From 1995, really, 95, 96, to Jim Herrick's final season at Georgia, you were not coming into Stegman unless you were elite and winning. I mean, that was a tough place to play. And, you want to talk about what Jonas and Jarvis and Ezra and all of them did to Tennessee when they were ranked number whatever they were, and beating Georgia Tech, number 2 Georgia Tech, with Dennis Felton. So, and Rashad, I mean, there were some players back then. Nevertheless, that Sweet 16 team with Gigi, Larry Brown, Shannon Anderson, they had some ballers. That should be every day at Georgia in basketball. Every day. One of the assistant coaches at Georgia right now went to the Elite Eight. He didn't play for Georgia. He was from Atlanta. I played AAU with him. It's inexcusable. It's gone on too long. Sharif Abdul-Rahim goes to Cal. Don't get me started. At least Matt Harpring went to Tech. Okay, Juan Gaston went to Tech. At least they stayed in state. But then, that fell apart for them. The amount of guys, William Avery. I mean, I can go on all day long. I can do this for a while. Baseball is, it's at least as good. Or at least it's in the same universe. So it's time for these teams to start winning. It's time for these programs to have the sort of success that gymnastics has had, 10 national championships, that Manny Diaz has had, and that tennis program with 6 or 7 national championships. You're in Georgia. You are basically in a state that is as jacked with talent as anywhere else in the country. And here's Georgia right now about to confirm this news. I got that by email. You should be winning at an elite level, period. Alabama doesn't have it's half the size of Georgia, and there's 2 major schools there. You can't really say that about Georgia. There's one school in Georgia. It's Georgia. Georgia Tech's given up. They don't care anymore. They know it too. So, look, it's breaking news. Georgia at 7:26 is confirming this. I waited, so by 7:30 it will be official that Georgia has got a new head baseball coach. But, it's already been confirmed by LSU's head coach. It's what it is. And I mean, listen, I don't know if this is going to work. I'm not smart. I don't know enough about baseball. I don't know. It should. It should work. And I'm not going to start throwing stones at Josh Brooks about a baseball hire, but I'll tell you, he made the right call firing Scott Strickland, period. It was time. It was time. And it's time for Georgia to start winning in a big way in baseball.